The Indianapolis Colts have officially named their initial 53-man roster ahead of the Week 1 opener with the Miami Dolphins. This required a lot of players to part ways with the team. So, who was the most surprising and impactful, and which players do you, the fans, think you're going to miss the most? Well, guess what? We're going to talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast, as always presented by Indianapolis Colts on SI.com. My name is Drake Wally, co-deputy editor for the site and co-host of the show, joined by Noah Gebert, analyst for the site and fellow co-host of this podcast. Man, Noah, we are 10 days away from meaningful football and being, covering the NFL. It feels like it's been so long that you can't even remember what happened last year. But yeah, man, how you doing? There's let's just say this, fans, we have so much to talk about. We actually are going to do what we can to not run over like 20 minutes. But how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, I'm doing well, man. You mentioned 10 days until regular football starts, and it's almost hard to even think about that right now just because of the flurry of news that we've had in the past week with roster cut down day and the waiver claims, practice squad announcements, all these news about people working or the Colts working out some players. So yeah, I mean, we've got a lot to go over and we're not even going to get into what's going to happen week 1. So yeah, excited that real football's on the way. Good to see this roster finalized. You see kind of where the strengths and weaknesses are. You kind of knew where they were before the cut downs, but now just like pure numbers, kind of what you're looking at, who you were able to keep, moved on from some players that you thought maybe it was time to move on from, frankly. So yeah, we're going to get into all that here.
Yeah, and Patrick, you make a good point. So we could also say these were the most impactful, the most vibrant, the most notable. And we're going to talk everything from the top of, all the cuts to our thoughts on the roster to, some of the workouts that have happened, some of the, practice. I mean, there's just so much that has happened this week, but I guess we'll actually go ahead and jump right into it because there is so much. And that is the thoughts on the initial 53-man roster. Now, when you look at this roster from top to bottom, there are some areas where you definitely still need depth. You definitely still need some help. The Colts have already started addressing some of those things. But overall, once it was put together, once they made it before the deadline for all of this, what were your thoughts on the 53-man roster? And is there any area where you're like, wow, they're pretty bare there and they need to continue to do some work?
Yeah, I think the thing that jumps out to me is safety still, just with your depth there being you keeping 4 safeties with Bynum and Cross as your starters, but then it's Rodney Thomas, Daniel Scott. Daniel Scott will be seeing his first regular season action of his career. Just saw his first preseason action of his career, and he's in his 3rd season, so we don't really know what he's going to be able to offer the Colts this season. Rodney Thomas, a guy also you thought maybe it was time to move on from after he came out strong his rookie year and then kind of faded off over the last 2, so you hope you get a little bit more from him than you've gotten in recent years. Safety is where I'm mainly concerned. It looks like the Colts are pretty concerned at linebacker with the amount of people that they've had working out. But I mean, just based on like you're starting to, I feel okay about Zaire Franklin and Joe Bocci. And then maybe when you get Carlisle's back, he can rotate in. But offensive tackle, offensive guard, or just the entire offensive line depth in general. I think I mentioned on our previous show, I didn't know if they had 10 rosterable guys. They obviously didn't think so either because they kept it down to 9. I thought maybe this was a spot where you'd look for a waiver claim. Didn't end up seeing any. So yeah, they're trusting in guys like Luke Tenuta and Dalton Tucker to be people that can fill in on short notice and come in and give them some valuable snaps. And Luke Tenuta did look good in the preseason, to his credit. So hopefully that works out for him. They don't end up having to test that offensive line depth too early in the season.
Well, and the thing is, there have been different things that Chris Ballard has done this season that he just hasn't done in previous seasons. And we're going all the way back to the start of the offseason when they, made some impactful signings like Ward and Bynum, so it's really not that surprising to see him kind of go against the grain, even if it's a little bit one less guy. But yeah, you're not kidding, man. I mean, we saw now starters, but last year, Matt Gonsalves and Tanner Bordellini saw some pretty meaningful snaps because Bernard Ryman, Braden Smith, Ryan Kelly at the time, they couldn't stay on the field. So, I mean, then Will Fries goes out with a season-ending injury, and they were rotating guys in there too. So, I mean, all you can do is hope that you don't have to dip too far in there. But, of course, that's also why we've got the practice squad here. So, we actually have to get to a super chat here. I love this. I love this one from Super Pony. Not Colts related, but Jerry Jones is a joke. So for those that are out of the know, and I actually have to post the subsequent comment. Whenever I think I have it rough as a Colts fan, I just think it could be worse. I could be a Dallas Cowboys fan. For those that aren't in the know, and this is worth mentioning because it'll go down as one of the biggest trades in NFL history. The Dallas Cowboys did finally let their bird fly free, and they traded Micah Parsons crazy enough to an NFC contender that they might even see at some point in the playoffs if they make it. And in fact, Adam Schefter has it right here. The Packers do play the Cowboys in week 4. So Micah Parsons has been traded. I don't have the deal pulled up, but let's just say it's incredibly expensive. I think Kenny Clark, defensive tackle for the Packers, he's going to the Cowboys. It's as far as Jerry Jones goes, we can't speak too far about him on the show because we have a lot to get to. But Noah, what do you think about this trade? I will just be very professional here and give a very lighthearted opinion. I'm not the highest on Jerry Jones and ever have been. I think that he's a little too involved with his own team and cares way too much about the publicity over the performance and the players and how they feel. I think this is an astronomically boneheaded trade. I can't believe it happened, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like things were fractured, but we've seen that around the NFL before. Trey Hendrickson spoke pretty poorly of his conversations with the Bengals executives and getting a deal done there, but they were able to work that out. So we've seen it come down to the wire, and ultimately people end up back with their teams. Terry McLaurin was talked about as a trade candidate, ends up getting paid by Washington. Dallas goes the complete opposite way here, and just a star play. I mean, and even more so that you're talking about Trey Hendrickson and Terry McLaurin, 2 really solid players, but Micah Parsons is on a tier above even them. So that's somebody you want to lock down. I mean, to be honest, Drake, you broke the news to me. I was busy. It came out like within the last hour. I've been getting stuff ready for the show and trying to update this Colts roster spreadsheet I've been keeping. So honestly, you broke it to me about a minute before we went live. So I don't know anything about the details, but yeah, excited for what it means for Green Bay. Luckily they're in the NFC. So not any immediate threat to the Colts, not playing the Colts this season. So, I'm just excited to see. I honestly haven't really gotten my mind wrapped around it, what they gave up. I need to really see the whole package deal before I really feel too good about it. But, I mean, even if you're giving up 2 firsts and a guy like Kenny Clark, maybe that is worth it for a guy who's going to change your defense like Micah Parsons does.
Yeah, so Micah Parsons of the Green Bay Packers, 4-year deal, $188 million for 2 first-round picks and Kenny Clark. So there you go. What an absolutely crazy time it is to be involved with the NFL. But Patrick, your comment about Jerry Jones is ridiculous. You keep that in the chat. But yeah, back to the Colts here. So this is a roster that really they have to perform, and they have to perform now. We don't even need to get into the quarterback discussion, because the whole roster has to go out there and legitimately compete, win, earn a playoff spot. You probably need to win your division if you're going to go with Daniel Jones. So all the moves that they've made to get down to the 53-man roster, cutting 37 names, it's insane when that happens. And as a news cycle and a channel that has to cover it, it's like getting rained on by hail. I mean, it's absolutely insane. So we're going to go ahead and chat. Let us know who you guys think are notable cuts, who you guys think are the most impactful guys. We're going to get into the notable cuts here. So with so many having to be removed from a squad, every single team, every single year, Noah, there's going to be those guys where you're like, how could you do that? Why did you do that? So tell me a little bit, just because we'll dive into some of the names and we'll really hash out, what happened. But the Colts honestly had an abundance of talent.
Yeah,
they really did. I mean, we've had discussions on this show over and over. They've had so many guys that you want to keep, and every team does. But I really feel like, Noah, this Colts team had exceptional talent, and there were injuries, but you still just had great depth. Unfortunately, you can't keep 90 players.
Yeah. Like Patrick mentioned, I think it says surprising in the title, but it says notable here. Because while maybe some people are surprised by him, I think every name that we're going to talk about here, you can see why They did it. It's not completely out of the blue. I guess we could just jump into the first one there. There were a few, mostly young players that you invested quite a lot in a couple of years ago and you hoped worked out. Two of these, especially these top two, are people who are plagued with injuries throughout their careers in their first 2 years. So unfortunate that you finally see them get healthy and you would like to see their success and their bounce back time come with the Colts, but maybe a change of scenery is the best when you haven't seen the field for 2 years. You're 2 years past where you were, and you've made some other investments at the position. So yeah, if we just get into to Juju Brents here, who was cut by the Colts on cut down day and then later claimed by the Miami Dolphins, who the Colts will see week 1. I'd be surprised if we saw a lot of Juju Brents week 1, actually playing on the defensive side of the ball there. But yeah, I mean, this is just someone who's dealt with so many injuries. You've mentioned may have played less games than Anthony Richardson in the past 2 years. And we talk all about Anthony Richardson not being able to stay healthy or stay on the field. I mean, it hurts a little bit extra because he's a local kid from Indianapolis. So that hurts a little bit more, but I mean, yeah, this is a guy who's been off the field and they've gone out and they've made wholesale changes, and they made wholesale changes at the cornerback position. Probably not even really considering Juju Brents in the picture there when they're going out and signing Charvarius Ward. They're drafting Justin Wally in the 3rd. I know it was after some injuries to Jalen Jones and Juju Brents that they went out and signed Xavier Howard, but that's another name. Go out and trade right before cut down day for Mekhi Blackman from the Vikings for a 6th round pick. You don't trade for a guy the day before cut down day if he's not making the roster. So that immediately takes over one cornerback spot. I mean, it was just, you would think there was a little bit of room for him because they did end up keeping Jonathan Edwards, the undrafted free agent corner out of Indiana State and Tulane. He ended up making the roster, and you maybe would think that's a guy you could sneak to the practice squad if you were to cut him on cut down day and that big massive cuts that was going on, and then you could keep a guy like Juju Brents. But yeah, it seems like the Colts were okay with where they were at the position group minus Juju Brents. They feel like they had seen enough out of him the last couple of years and enough out of this preseason to know that maybe he wasn't going to be their future there at the position like they had imagined 2 years ago. So yeah, I mean, it's also tough. Yeah. When you get a former second round pick that essentially gets beat out by an undrafted free agent rookie, that's a little bit harder to swallow, but man, it was just all about wholesale changes in the corner room. And I don't know if it really mattered what Juju Brent's pedigree was. It was just kind of the player that he was, which makes me a little bit nervous about Jalen Jones' future, because I feel like they were kind of in the same build, but pretty much everybody else, I mean, everybody aside from Kenny Moore and Jalen Jones in that cornerback room, they kept 6. Kenny Moore and Jalen Jones are the only ones returning from last season. So yeah, I mean, wholesale changes and then, yeah, those injuries. It was just time, I think, to move on from Juju here.
Yeah. And, now that you mentioned that, we'll kind of pull up the banner here. So, right now, you look at nickel, you got Kenny Moore, you got Charvarius Ward, and then they do have Xavier Howard, Jalen Jones, Jonathan Edwards. It's one of those things where, unfortunately, you can't invest too much into a position. But the thing is, like what I wrote about, something else that you brilliantly have brought up in the past, Noah, and I'll just quote it here. Brent's, I put that, his 11 out of 34 games just simply put his career in jeopardy. And we'll get to this later, but even Chris Ballard said, he just was unlucky, just a very unlucky career so far. But also it's this: Brent's fit the scheme of former defensive coordinator Gus Bradley. The veteran play caller favored larger cornerbacks with long wingspans in his own heavy scheme. Anarumo is a fan of quicker corners and implements more press coverage. Brent's cut is still a little shocking with how much promise he has, but it was a scheme fit. It was a new coordinator. It was the injuries. It was bringing on guys like Mekhi Becton, guys like Xavier Howard. When you do that, you've got I know that Xavier Howard didn't even play last season, but I mean, the man has had an absolutely impressive career. He's led the league in picks twice. One of those seasons, for God's sakes, he had 10 interceptions, which is ridiculous. Led the league one time in passes broken up. I mean, if he can even return to a little bit of that form, you're okay letting go of Juju Brents. But I will say, and tell me what you think about this, Noah, if he can stay healthy, we've seen what he can do. I think that he still has a bright future. I really do. I just think there's so many tools that he can implement that, as long as he stays healthy, he's probably going to find success. But like you said, I don't think the Colts have to worry about seeing him in week one. It's pretty simple.
Yeah. Luckily, you don't see somebody later down the season. You don't want to go up against these guys that you
No.
that you cut just on the optics that it might be if they have a good game against you. I think whether he has a good game, if he comes out and starts and plays well for the Dolphins week one, I still don't think the Colts are going to regret moving on, because I think they were just in the position where he didn't necessarily fit the scheme, and they had the people around in the position group to finally make the move. So yeah, I wish Juju the best for sure. You want to see a local kid do well. You wish it was in Indianapolis, especially with the investment that they made in him. But yeah, it was time for a fresh start, I think, for both sides here.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, it's a difficult decision, but especially him being, like you said, like him being a hometown kid, you kind of wanted that story to stick, but it was not meant to be. This next one isn't necessarily shocking, but it is in a way, because there was a point in time where you saw this guy play, and I think we all fell for this, where you're just like, that's the guy. That's the guy at the position. Look at what he's doing with three different freaking quarterbacks, and the athleticism, the size, the power, the speed for his size. And that's Jelani Woods. Of course, he didn't make the roster. He was pretty quickly, actually. In fact, both these guys were. Juju Brents and Woods did not stay. They did not stay available for very long, man. The Jets are getting themselves an athletic freak, 6'7", could any day be like 260 pounds. Just, it's similar to Brent's. The guy didn't play for 2 straight seasons, barely practiced. And then he goes out in the preseason and he's running with, the 3s and the 4s. And during training camp, he wasn't really that great. And his competition, Noah, as we mentioned, was Will Mallory. And Will Mallory just left him in the dust. So tell me a little bit about what you thought of this. I think it's less shocking. I think it's less shocking where it's more that it just sucks that somebody that's built like him, that showed the flashes he did, because they weren't flashes, they were explosions.
Yeah.
That it just didn't work out.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it seems like this is the trend with some of Chris Ballard's draft picks. When
It's
you go
so
for
true.
these really athletic players that just can't stay healthy. Anthony Richardson won, Jelani Woods won, Daniel Scott, who ended up making the roster at safety. Just, I think mostly because you didn't really have anything else there. I mean, these are people who put up insane athletic testing numbers, and people just haven't been able to stay healthy through the first few years of their career. Unfortunately, this is going to sound a lot like what we just talked about with Juju Brents, where it was, you've made some additions at the room. I mean, maybe just in terms of tight end, you made one addition, but it was a really big one in Tyler Warren with the 14th overall pick that kind of bumps everybody down the depth chart. So he was competing with guys like Drew Ogletree and Will Mallory. Mo Alley-Cox, I think, was always going to make the roster just as that solid veteran presence. Drew Ogletree is more of your blocker. Jelani Woods, I think, has the frame to be that kind of guy, but hasn't been in the past, mostly because he hasn't been able to be on the field. And I don't know if the Colts are in the business of trying to develop a guy into that at this point. They want people who can contribute immediately. Will Mallory was that guy you mentioned that he was competing with, and it seems like Will Mallory is that guy that the Colts trust a little bit more to fill into that Tyler Warren role. If Tyler Warren needs to be out for a series or two or misses any time due to injury, you want to have a guy like Will Mallory in there who's reliable and going to be in the right spot at the right time and come down with the ball. Jelani Woods might have been that, but I think was a little bit lagging behind, and just without being on the field the last 2 years, hasn't had the opportunities like Will Mallory has to put an impression on this Colts offensive coaching staff. And while Jelani Woods, I think, did have some strong performances here in the preseason games, and training camp wasn't too bad. I mean, and he was healthy the whole time. I mean, by all accounts, this is the best preseason that you've seen out of Jelani Woods. I mean, it was just a numbers game and time to move on there.
Well, yeah, and there's a comment here from Bruce, and I think that Tracy Johnson actually answers the question here, but we'll go ahead and still pull it up. We keep Daniel Scott. How's that different from Jelani or Juju? The tight end room was so packed that I mean, there was no way in hell that Jelani was going to make the team, and it was all on just as long as Will Mallory didn't lose his position, there was no way Jelani was going to get it. And then, of course, with the cornerback room, I mean, you go out there, you trade for Mekhi Blackman, who had his flashes before tearing his ACL, and you've got Xavier Howard, who can start for dang near any defense still. So those guys were the odd men out. But I mean, Daniel Scott, he stayed healthy for once, and the safety room is in shambles right now as far as depth. So he pretty much, not saying he didn't earn it, Noah, but I mean, he definitely had an easier time. He would have had to put up a pretty crappy performance against the Bengals, and he didn't. He actually played great. So
he had good practices. He had a strong performance. Like we mentioned, Jelani Woods was there too, but he had guys ahead of him that were performing a little bit better. I think the biggest thing that you have to mention when you're talking about all three of those guys is with all three of them, you weren't looking at starting roles. Juju Brents was going to be a depth corner for you. With Jalen Jones, Xavier Howard, Justin Wally, whoever it was probably going to be a depth role for Juju. Jelani Woods was not going to beat out Mo Alley Cox or Tyler Warren for any starting snaps there. Daniel Scott, also a depth role, like we mentioned. The big difference between the three of those is Daniel Scott is the one out of those three that gives you special teams ability. And when you're going to be a depth guy on the roster, you need to be able to give special teams ability. So I think that's some of the value in keeping a guy like Daniel Scott. But yeah, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more competition in that room.
Well, and that's what you always want. But one of the things that does stand out is, I mean, it is going to be interesting, and I am intrigued. I really am, to see what happens with Jelani Woods, especially because, we can talk about Juju Brents. All right, you got athletic corners all over the place. You've got long corners, stuff like that. But Jelani Woods, the tight ends that are built like him, that have that size, that speed, that athleticism, they are not like just all over the NFL. So I do hope, I really do. I hope that Jelani Woods finds success because he's been through absolute hell. So, but this next one is a guy that weirdly enough was actually claimed by the Colts off of waivers. No one thought about him. I sure as heck did. And I was like, oh, look at that. They got another guy. That's just what happens with waiver ads. But all he does is go out there in a landscape that he hadn't really seen. He played by all accounts pretty well. And that's Sam Womack. And of course, just like Danico Autry, the freaking Titans come in, baby. And they are like, all right, the Colts dropped someone. Now let's get a revenge tour going here, So you're just hoping that Sam Womack doesn't do to the Colts what Danico Autry has done to the Colts, which is outright destroy the offensive line. Tell me a little bit about Womack's time with Indianapolis. What do you think about this? I personally was surprised. I really was, because I thought that when you lose Wally, you've got these injuries to guys all over the place. Like at the time, Juju Brents and Jalen Jones, it just looked like he was a shoo-in. But then, of course, you get those deals done with those more veteran, more proven players. It just really, like you said, just like when they signed Charvarius Ward, everyone takes a notch down on the depth chart.
The moves for Xavier Howard and Mekhi Blackman shook up things a lot. I think if you don't go out and get Xavier Howard, you don't get Blackman. I think your room's a little bit worse, but I think you do have room to keep Juju Brents and Sam Womack on the roster.
It's fair.
So I think they were the victim of maybe Lou Anarumo just looking for different players. These were guys that he inherited, both Juju Brents and Sam Womack, as well as Womack played, kind of came in and was the savior of that other cornerback position outside of Jalen Jones on the outside. Just really out of nowhere. Yeah, you mentioned a waiver claim came in and was a massive contributor, beating out Dallas Flowers for that role. I think Titans claimed, last year DJ Baker was cut by the Colts also in preseason, and Titans claimed him as well. So yeah, the Titans have a thing for former Colts corners, especially in the last 2 years. But every argument that we're going to have about that we just had about Juju Brents and why he didn't make the roster, you're going to have the same exact argument here for Sam Womack in terms of, these are guys that Lou Anarumo inherited, and then you just go out and you add all these people. Charvarius Ward, you mentioned, bumps everybody down. Xavier Howard, you don't bring him in for a $5 million a year deal if you're not expecting him to play a significant role, or hoping that he can play a significant role. And then Mekhi Blackman, we mentioned a trade on cut down day or the day before cut down day. He's making the roster. Kenny Moore's making the roster. Then there's really two spots, and you weren't cutting Sam Womack or Jalen Jones to keep Sam Womack. That's one other thing that maybe could have changed the numbers game is that Jalen Jones injury. Maybe he was a guy that could have gone on IR for the first 4 games and opened up a roster spot, but good to see that he's pretty much healthy enough, at least, that they didn't consider making that roster move, and he'll be back pretty early. And then, Jonathan Edwards, I think, is another name that we got to come back to when we're talking about both of these guys. Is just a height, weight, speed guy that's going to fit kind of that mold of what Lou Anarumo has looked for in the past in corners, and kind of a raw guy that you can develop that kind of takes that spot of where Juju or Womack could have been.
Yeah, and in his time last season, he did have 8 starts. He had 2 interceptions, career high. He had 9 passes broken up, career high. 36 tackles, career high. He really played well, given the circumstances. The fact that he was just picked up off the scrap heap. You could tell that he had a lot of feelings about that with what the 49ers did to him, because he said, I'm never going to get cut again. And now, of course, he got cut, right? But that kind of attitude of not getting wanted, and then you take that fuel to another team. Man, you went from NFC to AFC. Okay, there's almost no chance, unless it's a Super Bowl, you're going to see the 49ers again. the Colts cut him, and now he's going to see him twice. So we'll see, because Sam Womack put out, by all regards, a good season after he was pretty upset that the 49ers didn't want him anymore. So that's going to be interesting. But yes, heck of a player, heck of a talent. He grinds, he works. He's just that kind of guy. So even though he's with the Titans, I do wish him the best. He's a hell of a player. So this one is – I was quite surprised by this one, because when you look at the tape, when you look at the preseason, when you look at the training camp that he had, I was impressed. I thought, and the Colts had been developing this guy, Noah, for like 2 or 3 years, and they drafted him to develop him. And that's Isaiah Land. Mm-hmm. So now he's with the Cowboys. I saw somebody say, I think it was Rich Wheeler, they're okay with letting go of Micah Parsons because they know that Isaiah Land's going to replace him. It's like, well, he's on the practice squad, so we'll have to see if that actually happens. But this one was surprising, because I know that you went and you invested in JT2. I mean, they've been doing this work on the defensive edge group. So you signed Samson Ebukam in 2023. You draft Latu in 2024. You draft JT Tuimoloau in 2025. Clearly, they've been wanting to build this room up. Then you've got Ebukam. Then you've got Kwity Paye. You've got some serious dogs in that room. Tyquan Lewis. Was it a numbers game, or do you think that they were just like, hey, we're okay with the group we have, and we can put that roster spot in another area on the roster? What were your thoughts? Because I thought that Isaiah Land looked pretty great in the preseason.
Yeah. And when you're mentioning like these notable or surprising cuts, we're really just looking at people that were signed elsewhere. There might be some other Colts that filter onto some practice squads later in the season, but these are the 4 that kind of stick out as people that went to other teams. Probably if somebody gets cut and they don't get signed anywhere to a practice squad or claimed on waivers, then they weren't as big of a cut as maybe fans were thinking they were. Isaiah Land maybe was one of these guys that I was kind of anticipating him to be claimed after the Colts waived him. Surprisingly passed through waivers with no claims on him, which I thought maybe would have opened up a spot there on the practice squad for him to come back and be that developmental guy on the practice squad, and they can continue developing him, even though I know it's been 2 years. But it seems like if that offer was out there, he chose to go with the Cowboys, who I think, oddly enough, originally that's where he came from first. He was waived by the Cowboys, and the Colts claimed him 2 years ago. So just going back to where his career began as a rusher for the Cowboys on the practice squad with an opportunity to develop there. You draft JTT and you have Latu and Kwity Paye and Tyquan Lewis, Samson Ebukam. I think the argument there is maybe you want to move on from one of the older guys and keep this guy that you've been developing, so you can continue to develop him and hope he turns out to be something more than what you might get from a guy like Samson Ebukam, who's in his 30s and coming off an injury. You don't know what he's going to be, and probably his ceiling of his career has been reached. Probably that 2023 season with the Colts is probably the height of what we're going to see from Samson Ebukam throughout his career. So maybe you were hoping that Isaiah Land would be a guy that would replace him on the roster, but you need wins this year. So if you even feel a little bit more comfortable with Samson Ebukam being a guy that you can filter in on these pass rush snaps, you would prefer him over Isaiah Land early on in the season, you go with Samson Ebukam, despite it maybe not being the best long-term move for the franchise. Just like we mentioned with quarterback and have been mentioning all offseason, when people are on the hot seat, they're going to make decisions that affect this season more than they affect the seasons to come. So I get the situation that the Colts are in making this move, and maybe Samson Ebukam does bounce back and have another year like he did in 2023. If he does, I think this conversation is pretty well put to bed. You don't really worry about what you're missing out on with Isaiah Land if you get that kind of Samson Ebukam back up in your lineup. But yeah, we just don't know if that's there yet.
Well, and like you mentioned, I mean, heck, if you can get 2023 Samson Ebukam out again, I mean, that's a guy that led the team in sacks and was second in pressures to a fully healthy DeForest Buckner. I mean, you talk about a guy that showed out as a starter. That's the blueprint of a guy that has been depth, and he's been buried on a team that had guys like Eric Armstead and Nick Bosa.
Mm-hmm.
That's like a perfect example. So, but yeah, I mean, you've got 5 solid pass rushers. There's probably other areas of the roster. I mean, clearly cornerback, safeties. You need more depth there because of Anarumo's scheme. So this is where the roster gymnastics and jumping through hoops and having to there's that Always Sunny in Philadelphia meme or gif where Charlie's like he's got like coffee riddled eyes and he's like got all these things on a pin board and he's like going crazy with crazy hair. That's kind of how you have to work these rosters from 90 to 53. It's like really, really hard. I don't envy anybody for having to do that kind of stuff in the short amount of time they have to do it by the deadline. So, but that's a tough one. I did think that he looked really good, but again, he's still on a practice squad. I think the Cowboys feel like they can develop him because otherwise, like you said, he would have been picked up pretty quickly. So this next one, I did like this signing, or I did like this waiver claim. I believe, tell me if I'm wrong, was this the only waiver claim the Colts had?
The one that made the roster. I think they did put in a claim for Cam Jones that was awarded to another team. I don't remember which team.
Okay.
So I think they made 2 waiver claims. They were awarded this one, but yeah, this is their only move on the waiver wire.
Yeah, well, hey man, I mean, you're talking about you're talking about a kind of a almost like a Joe Bocci type of guy here, and it's Chad Muma from the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, the thing about this one is I do like that the Colts are emphasizing more depth at linebacker. I mean, Jalen Carlies almost out of nowhere. I mean, he was walking around in a boot, right? So you didn't think, okay, this guy's just he's just gonna step out of that boot like Magic Man, and he's gonna go running out there and be fresh as a daisy. But he's on IR with the designation to return, but that means he's going to be out for at least some time. So this is probably a move to quell that. You're talking about a guy that was drafted in the 3rd round in 2022 by the Jaguars. Throughout his career, he hasn't made too much of an impact. Definitely not so far he hasn't lived up to a 3rd round pick because, like me and Noah have said, if you're drafted, obviously round 1's paramount. You gotta fit that designation. But I mean, rounds 1, 2, and 3, you are putting stock into those guys to be starters, pretty much. That's my opinion. And so he's definitely not been a starter. 94 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 3 passes defended, 7 starts, 50 total games for the Jaguars. What are your thoughts on this one? I mean, Ballard in the Ballard tenure, and regardless of defensive coordinator, it seems like this team really emphasizes linebacker depth.
Yeah.
I think this is the 5th guy on the roster. I think it'd be behind Franklin, McGrone, Alubi, and Joe Bocci, I believe.
Yeah. So this might be a little too aggressive to come out and say, but I feel like Chad Muma is the Segun Alubi replacement, which I think is a little weird to say about somebody who's still on the roster. But Alubi
who's done his job.
Yeah, who's done his job.
Yeah, done his job.
But you look at their profiles, both more in that Mike role and guys who are not going to be these coverage linebackers and standouts on special teams. That's kind of what you're getting with Muma. You're not going to keep 6 linebackers once Jalen Carlies comes back from that 4-week stint on IR. So when Jalen Carlies comes back, you're probably dropping one of these linebackers. I guess it's all going to depend on how those first 4 weeks of the season goes and see if anybody impresses. But I mean, I think Chad Muma is in direct competition here with Segun Alubi for that backup Mike spot and that core 4 special teamer role that's going to come in. But yeah, we came into the offseason Segun Alubi as a guy that we were talking about maybe competing with Carlies for that starting job. I mean, he was in the conversation way before Joe Bocci and Cameron McGrone were, and Joe Bocci, Cameron McGrone all came out and kind of elevated themselves over Segun Alubi on the depth chart. Alubi obviously has that special teams value, which I think he made the roster for. But when you go out and get a guy like Chad Muma, who I think does also have that special teams ability, and then also fits the scheme a little bit more and fits that prototype of linebacker that you're looking for. I mean, he's 6'3", 235. Muma is he's a large dude, a large linebacker, and that's kind of what Lou Anarumo favors. So yeah, I mean, I don't want to say that about a guy who's on the roster, but I think maybe that's kind of what we're looking at when we get to week 4 and Jalen Carlisle is activated again. I think it'll most likely come at the expense of Alubi unless Muma is a disappointment these first 4 weeks.
Yeah, and it's always difficult because especially the Colts, every team. Look, guys, everyone watching this. Everyone talks about offense. Everyone talks about defense. Everyone talks about the sexy positions like QB, wideout, or defensive edge, or, cornerback. Special teamers, though, they are some of the most sought after players in the league. I mean, guys like Ashton Doolin. I mean, Tyler Goodson. Yes, he's a good running back. Yes, he can make it happen in the backfield. But the dude made his claim to this roster by doing great on special teams. There's a reason that Ashton Doolin was an all-pro special teamer. It's because he goes down the field as a wideout and makes tackles. Yeah. So when you get a guy who can be a protector, when you get a guy who can do the formations correctly, Luke Rhodes is arguably the best long snapper in the NFL. And so it's just like the Colts love special teams players because they can possibly develop those guys too. Yeah. That's a big one, is they can possibly develop guys like that. I will say, Noah, it would be a shame to see Segun Alubi not stay with the team because I think that we've watched him not do a whole lot of stuff, but I mean, he's done it. All he's done is go out there and do his job, and the roles that he has been placed in, he's played well. He's done a great job as a special teamer. Do you think that if they have to come down to it, again, it is an Anarumo thing. It's a whole new scheme, whole new coordinator, whole new philosophy. Do you think that Alubi's the odd man out? Because I personally agree with you. I think that they're going to probably keep Muma.
It feels like it, yeah. If you go out and you get a guy like Muma, you've gotten Bocce and you're really happy with him. Carlisle, you don't want to give up on this early. So when he comes back, and then Ballard made it pretty clear in the press conference that they're not done looking at linebackers, and there might be another move coming there. We've got some names to mention later on. I think Neville Hewitt, Matt Adams, former Colt Matt Adams, former Colt Anthony Walker, Kaiser White, all linebackers that worked out for the Colts this week. So, they're obviously looking at some of these guys, and maybe that's names of veterans you want to keep under your hat just in case you need to pull them out in case of emergency due to injury at some point during the season. But also might be people that they want to consider over some of the other guys on their roster right now. So, yeah, Segun Alubi, a guy that I think the Colts thought highly of at one point, but just seemed to drop lower and lower on the depth chart as training camp in the preseason went on. He's on the roster, so we'll see for the first 4 weeks. He definitely is going to have that opportunity to make an impact on special teams, and we'll see if he gets any reps on defense to kind of show that he's worth holding on to. But yeah, I think when you've got a team that's this intent on looking at linebackers and turning over the position, and then you see that they've already done that at corner, that they're not afraid to go out and sign veterans to replace some of these back end guys on the roster. At least Lou Anarumo's not. So yeah, I would expect a move to happen at some point in the first 4 weeks of the season. We'll see if it's Alubi that gets shafted there.
Yeah, and one more thing to make a point about is, I know we've mentioned this on the show, but I don't think that we've said it enough, and maybe not enough people know it. It's not that Lou Anarumo hates young players. He doesn't. But this is a coordinator that clearly, even when you ask him questions, he clearly likes veteran players. He's not the kind of coordinator that's like, okay, we got this young guy who's barely played, let me help him. He's just not that guy. He's too ready to go now. He's a very demanding coordinator. He wants you to do your job, and he will absolutely. I mean, you should hear him. Sometimes you could hear his voice just cascading across the practice field. I mean, he demands excellence, and he doesn't have a lot of patience for young guys. So it makes sense. It really does. But we'll go ahead and get to some of these practice squad signings. So the practice squad, I'm reading the Colts website, is as follows. We have Ben Nichols, safety; Tyler Scott, wide receiver; Coleman Owen, wide receiver; Laquan Treadwell, wide receiver; Khalil Herbert, running back; Ulysses Bentley IV, let's freaking go, running back; Chris Lamons, cornerback; Trey Washington, safety; Maximilian Meng, tight end; Sean McKean, tight end, Austin Ajaki, linebacker, Mose Vavau, center, Josh Sills, guard, Josh Tupou, defensive tackle, Marcellus Johnson, defensive tackle, Darrell Nchami, defensive edge, and of course, today, along with Laquan Treadwell, was 6th-round rookie Colts pick Tim Smith at defensive tackle. So what do you think about this practice squad? I think it's freaking solid. I think that a lot of these guys I had a chance to see. A couple of these guys I'm absolutely not surprised in any way, shape, or form. The Colts came back and got them. A couple I'm surprised by. So what are your thoughts? Are there any that, really pop out to you, or any that you're like, wow, they could have a shot? I mean, any of these guys could get called up. You know what I mean? Yeah. But are there any that really stand out to you, Noah?
Yeah, I think they did they split it pretty evenly between guys that are super young that you want to develop, and then also veterans that you can rely on and throw in right away if you need to. Guys like Josh Sills, guys like Laquan Treadwell, Khalil Herbert, Chris Lamons. These are all guys that you feel comfortable throwing in. Josh Tupou, defensive line, you can throw in. And then they kind of match those. Like, you've got Khalil Herbert at running back, but then you've also got Ulysses Bentley, this young undrafted guy who you can develop. They got Josh Tupou at defense on the defensive line, but you've also brought back Tim Smith there, another young guy that you can develop in that same kind of role. So yeah, a really balanced practice squad, I would say, where if you have to bring some guys up on game day, like call some people up, Chris Lamons is a name I think we're probably going to see pretty early on in the season at some point. Laquan Treadwell is a name that could get called up in case of injury, but I mean, with 6 wide receivers, that's a little bit less likely. Yeah, I mean, it's just a pretty balanced group. Josh Sills, I think, is a name you're probably going to see at some point this season also. But yeah, I think people are going to be most excited about guys like Coleman Owen, Ulysses Bentley, these undrafted free agents that ended up going out and having an impact in preseason and really earning a job. I'm intrigued by Marcellus Johnson, the tackle, who is actually Eric Johnson's brother, the defensive tackle. So we've got a brother pair on the roster. Marcellus Johnson, I think, came from the Giants, another young tackle that you can try to develop there. When you have the questions that you do, you've got Jalen Travis, who I think the Colts are really happy with the progress that he's made. And then you've got Luke Tenuta, who just really only has a couple of preseason games of solid performance. You wanted to keep another number there. So you've got Marcellus Johnson as another guy you can develop. I like the practice squad. Darrell Nchami, I think, is a guy. We talked about the signing of our Isaiah Land going to the Cowboys practice squad and how that was maybe a notable signing. I think Nchami was right up there with Land in terms of the performances he was having during training camp and preseason. And like his pecking order on the depth chart was right around or maybe above in some cases where Isaiah Land was. So they were happy with Nchami's performance and willing to give him those reps that they were taken away from Isaiah Land in some instances. So I think that's pretty much your direct Isaiah Land replacement there. So maybe I mean, I don't know what the logistics were of him going to the Cowboys practice squad. I don't know if Land had an offer from the Colts practice squad, but maybe they did decide to go with a guy like Nchami as someone they would prefer to develop in this new scheme.
Yeah, I think that, 3 guys that stand out to me the most, I mean, Laquan Treadwell, that's just somebody. I mean, if anybody wants to hear about what the Colts think about Laquan Treadwell, go to X or go to Google, type in Shane Steichen, Laquan Treadwell, and you'll hear just how much the Colts appreciate Laquan Treadwell. All the dude does is not complain. He's been a bust, okay? He's been an absolute bust. But all he does is just go out there and work. He doesn't complain, just does his job. So I loved the fact that Coleman Owen made it. Yeah. Because he just went out there and balled out. Just a great, great job from the Buckeye. I loved the fact that Chris Lamons was called back. Chris Lamons went out there and put on a hell of a preseason. And then my favorite, Ulysses Bentley the fourth, man. I was so impressed with this kid. Like, I would watch him during his running back drills. Fast feet. He punches the gap hard. He's just got tenacity. When he's in front of the end zone, he will fight to get in there. I mean, just doesn't shy away from contact. He's at least somewhat elusive enough to keep guys guessing. It's a good practice squad, I think, that they've assembled here. And they're going to give the guys on game days or to prepare for game days, they're going to give them great looks. And every year these guys get called up. Every team has to do it. You got to keep replenishing it. So we'll see what happens, but I think that they've looked good.
Yeah, I think Chris Lamons is a really good shout there in terms of, like, Just somebody that the Colts didn't anticipate keeping. Like they didn't offer him a reserve future deal after as a contract expired this offseason. They waited for some injuries to happen in the cornerback room, and they definitely did before they brought him in. But yeah, as soon as he came in, he kind of took over that backup nickel spot that you had thought Justin Wally would kind of be. And I think it seems like even though he's on the practice squad, he might be the primary backup to Kenny Moore right now. You've got Mekhi Blackman, who's played some in the nickel, but I think his best reps in the NFL have come on the outside. So really your 3 depth corners are guys who are primarily going to be on the outside. Jonathan Edwards, Jalen Jones, Mekhi Blackman are guys I envision being on the outside most of the time. So maybe if Kenny Moore goes down for a little bit in a game, you have a guy like Blackman jump in there as your backup nickel. But I think if Kenny Moore's out for any extended amount of time, Chris Lamont is the immediate guy that you're calling up to take over those starting duties there. I wanted to talk about Tyler Scott too, who was a new addition.
Go for it. Yes.
It's just former Bear, former Cincinnati Bearcat, also Alec Pierce's teammate in college, another one of these speed guys, smaller size, 5'10", 190-ish, ran a 4.4.
Still 23, by the way.
Deep threat. Yeah, I think this is a guy, who's also worked with Brian Mason, the Colts special teams coordinator, as a returner, and maybe they're going to try him out as gunner just on the practice squad. This is in case you need to call somebody up. You've got Ashton Doolin and Tyler Goodson as your gunners right now, but if one of those guys goes down, maybe Tyler Scott's a name that you try to bring up on that. But yeah, just came out. It's interesting that they have 6 receivers on the active roster and then an additional 3 on the practice squad. Keeping 9 receivers around the building seems like a lot, especially when you're keeping I think 6 tight ends also. So that's 15 total pass catchers on your roster and practice squad combined, which seems kind of crazy. Just the way that the Colts have valued the trenches in the past. And it seems like those numbers are kind of flipped from where they should be. Maybe you should have 15 offensive linemen and 12 pass catchers instead, but that's just kind of the way it worked out. There was just talent there, right? You had Laquan Treadwell and Coleman Owen, guys that you didn't want to let go of. And then Tyler Scott, I think, is just one of these guys who you want to fill in special teams. We've talked about the importance of special teams with these back end of the roster decisions constantly. So I think, he's just a guy that you have on retainer just in case you need some help with that at those gunner spots.
Yeah, we are both in agreement. And I think a lot of people, if they looked at this practice squad roster, you can do a lot worse than the talent they've put together. And you've got, like you said, you've got everything sprinkled in. You've got rookies, you've got young guys that have a little experience. You got guys like Treadwell and Herbert that have been doing this for a while. So it's good to have that kind of deep depth on your team. But of course, then we're going to get to a guy that a lot of people have been preaching for this team to get, and that is Mike Hilton. So of course, Mike Hilton, he's played plenty of football, 8 years. He's had 56 starts, 123 games, 13 picks, an interception, a return for a touchdown, 56 pass defenses. He had an outrageous 4 sacks in his rookie year, 11.5 total. This is a guy that will be able to go out there and produce if you need him to. Of course, he played 4 seasons with Lou Anarumo, so that is – if anyone hasn't already caught on to the fact that Lou Anarumo's influence is real, you're crazy. Xavier Howard, probably him. Mekhi Blackman, probably him. The fact that they went and got Justin Wally, that's probably him. Charvarius Ward, guarantee you that he asked for that. So
Joe Bocci, Josh Tupou, both guys that he's worked with in the past. His fingerprints happened very quickly when he took over here. So
endless. This entire defense has flipped as far as the scheme and the roster already. So this would be good. This would be a very, very good signing. If he was signed, you can pretty much forget about the Chris Lamons as the immediate backup in the nickel comment. I would love it. I'm not going to lie. I really would. I think that last year even he played good. He had 10 starts, had another pick, 73 tackles. What do you think about a potential Mike Hilton, Lou Anarumo reunion?
Yeah, it makes sense, and we wouldn't think so because of the position that he plays and the player that the Colts have already at that position, and Kenny Moore locking down that nickel spot. But when you think about it and how much dime the Bengals are running, and you think about those 3 safety sets, who are you bringing in? You're bringing in Rodney Thomas to play some significant snaps on the defensive side of the ball, which maybe he's going to be okay in that dime back role and not so much as the lone deep safety back there for a defense. Maybe he's valuable as an extra defensive back, but I think Mike Hilton's a little bit more valuable. If you were to go dime, I would rather bring on Mike Hilton as that 6th defensive back. So I think he has an immediate path to getting some playing time and some sub packages without any injuries. And then, yeah, you always want to be prepared in case of injuries. If Kenny Moore goes down, I as well as Chris Lamons played in the preseason, we've seen a lot of Chris Lamons in Indianapolis. And while his performances have been admirable enough filling in, I know he started that Raiders game last season at a slot. I mean, he's filled in and played okay, but you'd rather have a guy who can make an impact and you don't see too much of a fall off with your defense if he's available. And I'm surprised that, imagine just the names in the defensive back room. If you go out and get Mike Hilton, just in the cornerback room, you got Mike Hilton, Kenny Moore, Travarius Ward, Xavier Howard. You've got 4 Pro Bowlers, 2 All-Pros in that cornerback room. If that's the move that you make, definitely long in the tooth a little bit for some of those guys. But yeah, I think where you would see him come in is one, if there's an injury, he's a guy you're immediately calling. And I'm sure if Kenny Moore goes down for any time and Mike Hilton hasn't been signed, you can pretty much assume that that's something that's going to happen. But right now, even with the team healthy, I think there's an immediate path to playing time there. And I think Jonathan Edwards would probably be a guy who would kind of get bumped down to the practice squad if he can make it through waivers, if that were to happen, because I think you do have Jalen Jones, Mekhi Blackman, guys you trust to play on the outside. So Jonathan Edwards, I think, is exclusively an outside corner. So I think that's where the depth would happen there. So if we do see a Mike Hilton signing anytime in the near future in the next week or two, maybe even before the season kicks off, then I think, yeah, Jonathan Edwards is probably going to be the one that takes the brunt of the damage there and ends up on the practice squad if they can get him back there.
Yeah, Mike Hilton would be a fine addition to this defense. You're not going to ask him to go out there and, regurgitate his best seasons. You're just not going to get that. But it's important, especially at nickel right now, because there's really no one behind Kenny Moore that you can be like, hey, you know what? You are a slot corner that can play the slot really well. Like that's not existent minus Chris Lamons, who, no offense to Chris Lamons, yes, he looked great in the preseason against backups and whatnot. But you're not wanting to just sit there and be like, hey, you know what? If something were to happen to Kenny, or if he needs a breather, God forbid, what if there's like a Tyreek Hill that's in the slot against Chris Lamons? You want somebody who's been there, done that, played plenty of snaps, started plenty of games. So it just makes perfect sense as to why they did that, and they're working out Mike Hilton. So if that's a signing that happens, don't be surprised at all. Lou Anarumo has basically gotten whatever he wants up to this point. So this next one, I do love these workouts. They did work out also. I think it was Matthew Adams, also former Colt. So clearly the Colts are trying to dip into guys that have played for them before. You got Anthony Walker Jr. and Kaiser White. So Anthony Walker Jr., for those out of the know, he played with the Colts for plenty of seasons, had arguably his best seasons of his career with the team. Did succumb to some injuries, ended up going to the Browns, ended up going to the Dolphins. Kaiser White, he's played primarily with the Arizona Cardinals. But these are both guys that could come in and they could produce for you. I will say, Kaiser White, great run defender. That's what you would ask him to do. He can't cover a stone. Yeah. He absolutely sucks at coverage. So I would prefer for them to go with Anthony Walker because Kaiser White is a massive liability if it's a passing down. But what do you think about these two? I think that, it does say a lot. They're taking this linebacker position and the cornerback positions very seriously.
Yeah, we threw out Anthony Walker and Kaiser White here because those are the two bigger names that they worked out. I think you mentioned Matthew Adams, who's been mostly a special teams guy. Neville Hewitt, who's also they also worked him out. I think Derek Forrest also, but he's more of a safety, not a linebacker. Kaiser White, I think, is a guy that of a veteran that you could have around. It's sad that he's not performing well in coverage or hasn't in his past because I think he is a safety convert when he was coming out of college. So something that you would have hoped would have been a strength for him. Soft spot for me because I think he's always with his 88 speed or whatever he has on Madden. I think he's been my Madden linebacker for quite some time in franchise. Just a deep cut there. So just a name you could bring in that's a veteran presence. You're working out all these guys. Obviously, they're not super happy with the position. It can't just be to have all these names on file for the season. Because you've got guys like a Jakey on the practice squad you could bring up. Carly's coming back from IR. You've got people on your roster right now that you could turn to. So they're going out and they're turning over all these stones. Anthony Walker, I think, is the guy that you would bring in to be that backup for for Zaire Franklin.
Yep.
Did he maybe, I don't know what his numbers were looking like last year, but at least when he was with Cleveland, he was pretty solid in pass coverage, as well as in run coverage or in run defense. So yeah, I think that's kind of more your well-rounded linebacker that you could go out and get, and somebody who could step in the absence of Zaire Franklin and be a leader. He's done that in the past with the Colts. He did that for the Browns in terms of being a team captain and a guy that's wearing the green dot and communicating those plays. Just a overall solid locker room guy. I think maybe Anthony Walker's a good guy to bring in that sense, but yeah, I mean, it just, no matter what the name is, when you're talking about these 4 linebackers that they're working out, or even if they go out and decide to work out some more next week, then it definitely just spells a clear, they're just not content with the 5 that are on the roster currently. And that's not counting Jalen Carlies out with the injury. You think it's probably Segun Alubi, but man, if you're only replacing Segun Alubi with another, like with your linebacker 5, does that make you happy with your linebacker room? It seems like it goes a little bit deeper than that. Maybe they were happy with the performances they were getting out of Cameron McGrone because it was a little bit surprising, but they still wouldn't trust him to rotate in some starting defensive snaps in the regular season. We don't know. I guess we'll see if any signings come before week 1, and if they don't, we'll see kind of what that snap rotation looks like. It sounds like Joe Bacci might be that guy primarily besides Zaire Franklin, but Lou Anarumo has noted that he likes to rotate those snaps. It's not going to be somebody who's playing 90% of the snaps as that second linebacker. They're going to rotate those snaps. So we'll see kind of how those snaps get divvied up between McGrone, Bacci, Muma, Alubi, all these guys, and kind of go from there.
Yeah. And when you're talking about whatever Anarumo's like, look, I understand that, he's come in and he's made an absolutely astronomical amount of changes, right? But like he is well respected. He's been successful. He's been able to get things done. And these are very prevalent types of moves. So, if they end up bringing in one of these guys, you can't really be too upset about it. So this last one is big, and we'll try to run through this as fast as possible. But Chris Ballard, per usual, I understand that people are like, oh, he just gives – he just kind of talks about whatever the hell, you want to hear, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of things you can say about Chris Ballard, but something that you have to give him credit for is he has got some of the best press conferences you can possibly get if you're a media member or fan. He gives you exactly what he's thinking. He doesn't hide anything, and he's very forthright. And the press conference, please, people go watch it. He gets so pissed off hearing about quarterback so much. He's like, you do know we have 51 other players on the roster, right? And then the media just keeps asking him about quarterbacks. They were prepared, very much prepared to grill the crap out of this man about Anthony Richardson. That's all this was. And I will say that he said that the franchise still believes that he has a bright future. What were your thoughts on Chris Ballard's press conference? You could definitely hear in his voice that he said, he's just pretty much, I guess, to make it a synopsis, he's not where we want him to be. And I personally, and I'll get to something else after you answer here that Albert Breer answered for me.
Yeah.
But I think that they overestimated their abilities to develop this guy. And I also didn't think that they would be looking at 2 seasons with 15 games played.
Yeah, I think we've talked about who shares the blame in the Anthony Richardson experiment. And I think it's
everyone
pretty clear. It's both sides.
Yeah.
If you're talking about the team and you're talking about Anthony Richardson,
Yeah.
1, they didn't develop him. 2, he didn't develop, and that's on him as much as it is on them. So yeah, whether it was a lack of ability to develop or just a lack of their evaluation ability, right? Just a misevaluation of the workload that he was going to be able to handle, or his willingness to come in and take that role as a starting quarterback. I mean, there was a miscalculation somewhere. And they're definitely not going to admit that with Anthony Richardson still on the roster. I think Chris Ballard came out and said what you would expect him to with Anthony Richardson still on the team. Even if Anthony Richardson had been traded, he's not going to come out and bad talk a former player. So you're not going to get some answer about, we tried everything with him. I mean, I guess maybe you got that a little bit with Cam Turner in his interview. We tried everything and it still didn't work. But yeah, Chris Ballard's not going to be a guy that's going to come and say that. I know there was a lot of discourse on Twitter about this being a disaster of a press conference for him, but I think just kind of as years have gone on with Chris Ballard, I think he's just kind of gotten a little bit more sassy in the press conferences.
Sure.
He's a little bit more defensive, a little bit more sassy. And I think that's fine. I'm not upset about it. I don't dislike the way that he handles those press conferences. I like him having a little bit of swagger and confidence, but he had to know that this was what the press conference was going to be. When you go with Daniel Jones instead of your 4th overall pick after 2 years, you're going to get question after question about it. You don't really have a right to be upset about answering questions about it. You're just in that hot seat like you will be. And really, like, this is the last time you're going to hear from Chris Ballard until the end of the season, because it kind of turns over to Shane Steichen taking the lead. You just don't get GM press conferences in the middle of the season. So I guess the questions start to come up. Is this the last Chris Ballard press conference in Indianapolis? Because if things go poorly this season and Black Monday is a Black Monday in Indianapolis, then we're probably not going to hear from Chris Ballard.
Yeah, and so I wrote a piece on a specific question by the absolutely always fantastic James Boyd. Basically asked Chris Ballard if they did the right homework on Anthony Richardson. Here was the quote. Yeah, we knew he was raw. We knew he was going to take time. I think everybody knew. I think we knew it was going to be a little bit of a roller coaster. Absolutely. It's really not. I mean, I don't know if roller coaster, and I'm not saying they're lying. You cannot tell me that when they were drafting this kid, that they were like, this is going to be a roller coaster. Yeah. I cannot imagine. I don't think you draft a quarterback 4th overall that is the rawest, most inexperienced quarterback in recent draft memory if you think he's going to be a roller coaster. Yeah. That puts people's asses on the line if you're dealing with a roller coaster at the most important position with an offensive coach who's supposed to be able to handle all this. Okay, Justin Herbert, Phillip Rivers, and Jalen Hurts, they were not roller coasters. Okay, they just weren't. So I think that they did take on a little more. But what I did is, so I put in on X in Albert Breer's mailbag, because he also works for SI. I said, do you truly believe that sitting AR for year 3 can benefit him, regardless of what happens with DJ? It seems that they've greatly overestimated their ability to develop such an inexperienced and raw quarterback. That's my humble opinion. I think that they're looking back and they're saying he gets hurt all the time. He's not connecting with the game plan. He's not understanding the scheme fits. He's not like, look, I'll make it very brief here. I know that there's people, myself included, that wanted Anthony Richardson to start all year. I think he needs to. I think that if Ballard and Steichen knew they had another year, I don't think there'd be any question here. I really don't. I also don't think Daniel Jones would have been signed. But dude, you're looking at a guy who last season he might have had a winning record, but you had Jonathan Taylor, you had Josh Downs, you had Michael Pittman, you had Alec Pierce, you had a solid offensive line. And you couldn't complete 50% of your passes. You were struggling to understand game plans and the day-to-day stuff. You hear these players get interviewed, they're talking about Daniel Jones is the first one in the room and he's the last one to leave type stuff. Like it's the pre-reads, the getting the huddle on, all lined up. It's making the right pre-play adjustments. You saw it in the preseason. Anthony Richardson stared right at David Ojabo of the Ravens. Did nothing. The play call was to let him run free so you could dump it to the flat or dump it to the tight end out. And people were blaming Tyler Warren for not chipping him. I'm like, that wasn't the game plan. All Richardson did was snap that football after looking right at him and look left. What happens? He gets destroyed and dislocates his throwing finger. So right now, I think the Colts, they are to blame. I think Richardson also up to this point probably hasn't put in the work he needs to. To wrap up this episode, Noah, tell me what you think about this statement. You're hoping and praying that Anthony Richardson learns something this year enough that next season, even if Daniel Jones balls out, goes to another team. I think that's what the Colts plan on doing unless the dude wins them a Super Bowl. I think that they're going to go with Anthony Richardson in year 4 and say it might be difficult to understand what's going to happen next with you, and we couldn't take your 5th-year option, but you know what? Let's see what you got. And your hope is that he can finally, in year 4, hit that developmental stride that they've been just hoping to God he can hit up to this point.
Yeah, which seems less and less likely. I think we've both agreed throughout just every year that happens, it gets less and less likely. And then every week throughout the preseason that he didn't run away with the starting job against Daniel Jones, it looked less likely. I think every week we get into the season and he hasn't earned that starting job back, it looks less likely. But yeah, I think that's the only hope that Chris Ballard has, I think, to keep his job for the long-term future, is he has to convince Carly and the Irsays that Anthony Richardson, like sitting him for a year behind Daniel Jones, was the best thing for him. He's ready to go year 4. And Carly has to believe that, right? And you have to do two things. You have to, one, like, believe in that yourself, that he's made that development. Because like you mentioned with Daniel Jones, I'm not sure there's a successful enough season that Daniel Jones can have that would save this regime on its own. I mean, if he goes out and wins the Super Bowl, you obviously don't move on from Super Bowl winning team or whatever, or Super Bowl winning coach and GM or quarterback. So you make that happen. You sign the extension, and that buys you time. And I think every Colts fan will be happy and eating their words if Daniel Jones goes out and wins the Super Bowl. But yeah, if you're falling short of that, if you're wild card exit, even a first round wild card win, and then getting stomped out in the divisional round, I mean, you need to have something for the future. And if you don't have that, then you have to move on, because I think I see a lot of this in the chat right now of, you can't let Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen pick the next one.
You can't.
Right? If it didn't work with it, it's either Anthony Richardson is the next one, or there's a next everybody. So yeah, that's just kind of the situation that you're in. So you have to come out of this year with him making some big strides, sitting as a backup, which he talked about Alex Smith a lot in that press conference. But yeah, sitting behind and learning behind a guy like Alex Smith could maybe do things for you. If Daniel Jones is Alex Smith, does that make Anthony Richardson's Patrick Mahomes? I don't know. He better hope so, because I think that's really the only chance that he has to keep his job.
Yeah, and look, at the end of the day, I know that there's a lot of upset people in the chat. There's a lot of discourse happening in the chat right now. Look, man, Ballard also said that we took a swing. They knew that they were taking a swing on Anthony Richardson. While I don't think that they knew it was going to be a roller coaster, they definitely knew they were taking some kind of swing. But anyway, that is our show. Everybody, we only went over 6 minutes, baby. Let's go. But as always, everybody, thank you so much. Don't forget to like the Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow Indianapolis Colts on SI, and of course on X, we are at Colts _SI. Subscribe to Horseshoe Huddle on YouTube and click the bell to always have those notifications turned on. And if you want to just listen to the podcast, Noah has us hooked up on Apple, Spotify, anywhere else you listen. So what we're going to be doing, guys, we even have a game plan here. Monday, we're going to be pretty much just talking about each position in brief. We're going to break down the roster, just kind of our thoughts on each position. And then Thursday is a preview of the first regular season game of the year, ladies and gentlemen, against the Miami Dolphins. It's finally happening. Noah doesn't just get to cover preseason football as a co-host. He gets to cover real season football. So everyone, thank you so much. Enjoy your day. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy your long weekend for Labor Day. And we will catch you all again right here on Monday night. Take care.